colleagues. Dr. Dr.Collence is a senior lecturer in the Faculty of Accounting and Informatics, Department of Information Systems at the Durban University of Technology. Chisita has been a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Information Science at LIASA. He has experience in library and information science practice, teaching, and collaborative research. He has published numerous journals in the DHET accredited list, including books and book chapters. Dr. Chisita has worked with various universities in Southern Africa and national, as well as international organizations involved in LIS, including the Zimbabwe Library Association, Library and Information Association of Zambia, and Library and Information Association of South Africa, that is LIASA, Africa Library and Information Association and Institutions. Can you mute, please? Thank you. AFLIA and the International Federation of Library Associations, that is IFLA. He is part of the list professionals involved in the launch of AFLIA in 2013. And he also works with AFLIA's Library Education and Training Institution and Training Institutions section. Dr. Chisita is serving his last term as secretary for IFLA's Indigenous Matters section. Well, let's welcome, join me in welcoming Dr. Chisita. Dr. Chisita, it's over to you.
Oh, greetings, everyone. Executives from UNISA, the president-elect, who has just spoken, also Mr. Mabaso, the veteran and founder also of the professional association, colleagues and friends, brothers and sisters. It is an honor to be invited to share ideas with other, colleagues. It is something that you cannot buy, but you have to experience it. Before we start, I'm from the IFLA Indigenous, section, meta section. So we usually want to acknowledge or pay gratitude to the ancestors, because the cables that we are using to speak and to communicate with each other are passing through those spaces that have been inhabited by the great ancestors we have created today. So we pay gratitude to that. My presentation is on navigating footprints of librarianship in dynamic infospheres and Afronographic reflections in space and time. Before I go, I would like also to acknowledge that I had Fatima asking, are you a paid-up member? I've been a paid-up member ever since, even way back before I came here. And I'm currently a paid-up member. I always make sure I try by all means to pay up. Right, to introduce our topic, we can say that there are numerous studies that on librarianship that focus more on the colonial and post-colonial developments of libraries in Africa. But there is this scanty of literature that also tries to go beyond that particular period, which is sort of like a dark period that people don't have interest in, to find out that before the coming of colonialism, how was the information landscape? Do we have anything that we can learn from or draw lessons from. So there's this depth of literature on Africa's role in the development of libraries and how ancient African civilization has contributed towards our libraries. Because if we are navigating librarianship in space and time, we cannot also ignore the contributions of the continent as a cradle of human civilization. What we discern from literature is that ancient Egypt was the supreme leadership in civilization, and students from different parts of the world flocked to that land, seeking admission into a mysteries wisdom systems. These migrations are similar to the current migration of students and job seekers from Africa to Europe. You know, migrations are a continuous process in human history. We also have had migrations in the form of the Bantu migration, where people moved from the other part of Africa and came to the southern part of Africa, occupying and displacing of the San and Khoisan people. We also had movements during the Mufekane, where people moved from South Africa to go and occupy the other parts within. We've also had movements, people coming in to work as laborers. So it's like a continuous process, right? My objectives is that we trace the footprints of librarianship from a micro perspective, describe the impact of inventions like printing press, demystify misconceptions of ancient librarianship, highlight the value of ancient librarianship on civilization, explain the correlation between libraries and the infosphere, identify challenges facing the libraries in the 21st century, and suggest recommendations. We find that how information has been represented through time. We find rock paintings, stone tablets, like the Rosetta Stone, the Egyptian stone, the Assyrian stone, etc. We also find the invention of writing itself, hieroglyphics, heretics, etc., or the symbolic representation of language. We also find rock paintings, also find printing through invention by John Gutenberg, the invention of digital telecommunications, internet and globalization, and currently the fourth industrial revolution, and also the era of smart technologies. All these have had significant developments, have had significant impact on LIS as a profession. So to start with, we look at the human being as the first library or librarian, because the human mind is the capacity not only to absorb and generate information, but also to generate, to synthesize, to analyze, to store, to preserve, and to retrieve it. But it has got its own limitations in the sense that the human being is a mortal being. The human being is born, lives, and he passes on to the next world. And this is evidenced by such sayings as a library has been destroyed when an old man or an old woman has died. Because in Africa, age is associated with wisdom. So we start with the human mind, and any engineering looks at how the human body functions. So whatever gadgets that we have, whether it's 4IR gadgets, etc., they are also developed in line with how the human being operates. So the human mind is the first search engine, the original search engine. We also have got rock paintings that are scattered throughout the region, throughout Africa. We also have got clay tablets, as I said, the Egyptian scrolls. We also had the development of what were known as institutional libraries, private libraries for the clergy, for the aristocrats. And now we have moved from automated to digital libraries and now transitioning to smart libraries. So it's a continuous process in this evolution of libraries. So libraries have come down to us as far back as 2000 BC. And other nations have had records to prove the existence of these libraries. That's the libraries, for example, in Mali, with South Africa, did a partnership when Mali was facing civil strife and documents needed to be saved. And there was an intervention by South Africa to save those documents because they contain valuable wisdom. The libraries, for example, in Egypt, they've been known by different inscriptions. For example, the medicine of the soul, the house of books, the healing place of the soul, a place for the cure of the soul. All these superlative descriptions give value and credence to the library as an institution and to librarianship as a profession, as was highlighted by the president-elect. Now, human beings being at the center of librarianship and information access, they occupy a unique space in the sense that we are distinguished from animals within the LIASA matrix. Our supremacy as human beings over other animals is that we have got the power of articulation, we have the power of communication, we have the power of knowledge, generating knowledge, processing that knowledge, preserving that knowledge, sharing that knowledge. We've got the faculty of wisdom, that what we call the mental alacrity. We've got the psychological resilience to withstand pressures. We've got the ability to record human experience in in terms of history, literature, revelation, and the scientific achievements that make part of our milestones as human beings. So we occupy a very significant space and as drivers of the information revolution. Books are important to us as librarians because these are our tools, what we call our sine qua non tools of our trade, the essential tools of our trade. But we need to know how they have evolved through time and space, since our presentation is looking at navigating the evolution through time and space. We've got plates of lead and copper, books as barks of trees, books as brick, stone, or wood. Even Moses' 10 commandments were written on clay and stone tablets. We've got also skin parchments of gods being used as books throughout history, linen, silk, and horns, rock paintings, as I highlighted earlier on, by the San and Khoisan people. Then we have the invention of the printing press by John Gutenberg in the 15th century, then the electronic and digital technologies ushering in new forms of books, what we call electronic books. So to books, we are indebted as the special vehicles for acquiring knowledge, the repositories of law, and the learning of all kinds that we pay gratitude to. Originally, libraries started in religious institutions and also amongst the aristocrats, the ruling classes at that time in ancient history. Ancient books had a religious focus because of the theocratic nature of the state. The church wielded more power during this period. For example, the ancient libraries of Egypt were located within temples. And this also stems from the fact that we can ask the question, does intellect come through faith or faith come through intellect? And when we look at various religions that we have, Islam, Christianity, and etc., we find that the ability to read and write is key to acquiring that faith. Why I cited Islam and Christianity, it's because Africa is espoused by Alima Zurui in the book Triple Heritage. Islam, Christianity, and African tradition have become part of our, triple heritage. So we find that the religious libraries have been used as tools of or instruments of evangelization. And the aristocrats and the clergy were the first to collect and preserve documents produced concerning their own activities. And any other type of library that evolved later on, like public libraries, school libraries, and university libraries, special libraries, etc., are a byproduct of the expertise of church libraries and their ability to document or manage information as resources. The printing press by John Gutenberg is also one of the significant development that we appreciate as librarians, because John Gutenberg invented the printing press in 1442. And its impact was so enormous because it brought about radical changes in the way that people viewed their governments. People began to question divine right to be ruled by kings. And when you look at from 1450 upwards, up to 1900, you realize that slowly, one by one, the governments by kings began to fall. With the last government in Europe under the king being the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which collapsed at the beginning of the First World War in 1914. Britain was able to preserve its monarchy because it came up with some reforms in the form of social welfare packs that enable people not to think in a radical way. And the monarchy has existed up to now. Now, through books, we found the demise of monarchical power in both various European countries. The huge volume of books that were being produced also brought about an awareness and a consciousness among people that were able to create or develop a new age of thinking in the form of enlightenment as people began to question so many things. It also brought about wider access, slowly, but not automatically, but gradually. It also enabled other people to have their works published. It also brought about the development of what we can call public education, because previously education was a private affair, because it was a preserve for the aristocracy, a preserve for the church. But after the invention of the printing press, it now, people began to think of creating schools that are public, that are run by the government for the people. Even though here in Africa, our form of education has been that of socialization in the spirit of Ubuntu. We also found that through books, literacy began to rise. Like books also were able to breathe life to librarianship and to what we can call modern librarianship. Books also spread ideas concerning history, science, poetry, and other, disciplines. Movements were also organized. For example, the Communist Manifesto was produced in the 1840s, and it had a serious impact on Europe. It caused revolutions. It caused also the birth of the Soviet Union, what we call Russia today, with the downfall of the Tsar after the 1917 revolution in Russia, waged by the Bolsheviks against the Mensheviks. Books also created public libraries because of industrialization. And also the coming into being of books caused a lot of uneasiness on the part of the aristocracy. For example, in 1537, the French government was the first to pass the legal deposit law. The reason why the legal deposit law was passed was because the French king became perturbed by the fact that there were so many books that were radical, that were questioning the status quo, or books that were regarded as part of the anti-establishmentarianism philosophy, books against the status quo, books advocating for republicanism, books advocating for a new thinking based on democracy. Now, what we call legal deposit and bibliographic control, national bibliographic control, universal bibliographic control, all emanate from this legal deposit law passed in 1537 in France to enable governments to control and know what was being produced in which area, which areas were lacking deficit. But however, authors did not trust the government because they felt the government was going to spy on them and know which radical ideas were being produced. Books also enabled individuals to more easily and create multiple copies of documents and spread these widely to a wider audience. I'll try to speed up there. So I would give you this quote, even though it sounds blasphemous. Without books, God is silent, just as natural science at a standstill. Philosophy and let us dump all things involved are in darkness. So books and librarianship, you cannot separate books and librarianship because those are the sine qua non tools of our trade. Right? Now, why should we study this significant era? Because history has been distorted and disfigured. And as a result, when we teach students, we start teaching them from when the colonialists came. We forget how pre-colonial era we were able to manage information. So using philosophies of Afrocentricity as propounded by Molefe Asante Kete, Sheikh Andy Diop, and many other writers, we would like to turn the globe around and say, let's start from prehistory. So this notion that Africa was the dark continent and etc., and hence the need to bring about Christianity, commerce, and civilization, it's one thing. There's a need to go deeper and study why that past is regarded as the dark continent. We also want to study this history because we want to learn from history and avoid what I can call the madmen of yesteryear syndrome, where we might think we have invented something, yet it has always been there. But for us to know that it has been there, we need to have an understanding of how things have evolved through time and space. Right? Our libraries as memory institutions, as educational institutions or cultural institutions, they exist in what we can call infospheres. Right? These spheres that we inhabit include the social sphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, lithosphere, and the atmosphere, then the infosphere. So the infosphere underpins all other spheres. It controls or it can manipulate the social sphere, the biosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere, because of the fact that we are custodians of knowledge, inventions, innovations. So as information people, we permeate all aspects of human endeavor. We are everywhere. We are ubiquitous. So the infosphere consists of inputs and outputs of conversations, books, television, radio, speeches, church services, classes, lecturers, as well as information received from the physical world by personal observations, non-personal observations. It is a segment of the social sphere in its own right. And indeed, it has considerable claim to dominate the other segments. So as librarians, we are part of this infosphere, and we have the ability to control the all other spheres through the knowledge that we give, that we share, that we disseminate to support national development goals, to support human progress. I will skip that. So we are guided by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 19, that states that everyone has the right to freedom and of opinion and expression. This right includes the freedom to hold an opinion without interference, to seek and receive and impart information, ideas through any media, regardless of frontiers, whether physical or digital. Now, these tenets of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights have been incorporated to national constitutions throughout the world, where there are fundamental freedoms and privileges that are bestowed to everyone. And as librarians, we respect this because it enables us, it gives us the legal framework to be able to facilitate, democratize access to information in order to make the world a better place for all. Our libraries are products of technology. We are part of what we can call the constituents of a gift society. That is the gift that keeps on giving. The library is a public space, a third space. The first space is our home. The second space is our workplace. And the third space is the social space. It's a space that is free from the commercial transactions that you find in the home. It's free from the pressures that you find at the workplace. That is for the users who come to occupy these spaces. And we need more and more of these third spaces because of the dire need for connectivity, the dire need for social cohesion, the dire need to provide for our epistemological needs, the need to know, the need to learn and to continuously learn. Because they say we learn from the cradle to the grave, because we don't know what happens when we die. But learning is a continuous process. It's an important space because the library occupies an important space in the scheme of things in the progressive new brave world. That's the world of technology, the weird, wired, networked world. It's a flag bearer of book culture and literacy. And they say democratic society is a product of the books. The triumph of the book written by men over that revealed by God and over the book of laws dictated by the aristocracy. So the book has powerful impact on developments that have taken place in the world that we occupy. So LIS as a profession is a service discipline that is a steward of the infosphere. So librarianship is transitioning from stewardship of the physical record to stewardship of the infosphere, that is controlling everything that happens within the infosphere, ensuring that people are literate. People are not only literate in the sense that they are able to read and write, but they become imbued with what we can call a high sense of information literacy, a high sense or high degree of meta literacy, where they think critically, where they don't just read the word, but they read the word, they read the world, they engage as critical thinkers wherever they are. So that's the stage at which our libraries are. Now, the other significant stages that we can talk about are the stages like, for example, automation of libraries. This took place after 1945 when the Second World War ended. By the way, the Second World War was from 1938 to 1939 to 1945. After 1945, the war ceased between Germany allies and the opponents. But another new form of a war began because of the fact that we now had what we can call multipolar world, a world that is dominated by two superpowers, the United States of America and the USSR. And as a result, thinkers in the USA, information science and IT thinkers began to, think about innovating ways on how to manage the large volumes of information that would be generated and also how to support research and how to come up with the systems that would enable their countries to manage huge volumes of information in order to make informed decisions, in order to have a competitive advantage over other countries. So this led to what we can call the era of automation, where people like Vannevar Bush, Joe Licklider began to think of ways on how to make library operations move away from manual systems to automated systems. How to lessen the burden on the librarian and let technology take over. This would give the benefit of what we can call, for example, we have improved internal internal workflows and sharing of cataloging data, providing access to local library resources, providing provision of access to online catalogs, accessing resources outside the library, because previously you could only access resources within your physical library. But through automation, it became possible to access resources beyond your boundary. Enhancing document delivery, and also the era of what we can call interoperable systems. These are systems that enable computers to communicate with each other and share data using what are known as the Z3950 global standard and WW World Wide Web protocols for sharing data. And this has now become the norm nowadays with our digital libraries, where we can share metadata and our systems can speak to each other. The era of automation was replaced by the current era that we are in now, which is the digital phase, or the era of digital transformation. This is where we talk of digitization of resources, converting content from analog to digital. Whereas with automation, we are merely talking of computerizing systems to ensure easier workflows. There have been various developments since the 1950s that have led to this digital transformation, especially in the developed world. For example, investments made by government agencies in the USA to ensure that the Internet Protocol suite TCP was introduced as the standard networking protocol. The rise of communication services like electronic mail, instant messaging, VoIP telephone calls, etc., among other developments. These digital library phases have been divided into two, but overall, they are all aimed at achieving the same thing, ensuring the digitization of collections and systems for libraries to able to become more vibrant in an increasingly technology-driven dispensation. These initiatives also have been manifested in Africa. For example, the Africa Digital Library project, the PERI project, which is the program for the enhancement of research and information, which was supported by INASC, Agora, access to global online research in agriculture, health, internetwork access to research initiatives, etc. And all these have been aimed at ensuring that universities and other resource-endowed libraries move towards the digital frontier. Here, we also, to sum up what I've been saying, we can say that our libraries have evolved from first generation libraries, first generation, talk of first generation libraries, first generation catalogs, first generation books, first generation librarians. First generation libraries are the ancient libraries and others that followed up, church libraries and etc. Second generation libraries are those that are based on automation. Then we have got third generation libraries. That's from the second half of the 1950s up to the 20th century, end of the 20th century. Then fourth generation libraries and fifth generation libraries. From fifth to sixth generation libraries, we are now talking of digital libraries and smart libraries. 4AR, 4IR, artificial intelligence, virtual, reality, and all other, smart technologies of the new era. I'm about to wind up now on this. So what are the challenges that we encounter as, Africa? Firstly, we look at the digital divide because of the fact that we have got poor, internet connectivity. And but that does not mean that we should surrender to the divide. Because a challenge, in a way, provides a fertile interlude for creativity and innovation, as you will see in the last two slides or so on. So what I mean there, how do we turn the digital divide into a digital dividend? It can only be possible through strategic thinking, strategic partnership, and also through cooperation and collaboration between libraries and related institutions. The reading culture, the libraries are key there in driving the reading culture because we have moved away from basic literacy We are now at an advanced level where the world in which we are now requires so many literacies: information literacy, meta literacy, digital literacy, cultural literacy, and etc. So that our people do not relapse into illiteracy. People should not read to read for the sake of passing exams, but they should read for the sake of acquiring knowledge, cherishing knowledge, enjoying the acquisition of knowledge. So that if we read only for passing exams, that might mean we will relapse into what we can call, we will become literate, illiterate, literate, illiterates. So we want to be literates forever, not literate, illiterates, because we've just, read to pass an exam. Right. Another challenge there is how do we respond to shifting information production and consumption patterns within the information landscape? We need to, be innovative, to be dynamic, to rise above, our physical spaces, to rise above, our physical spaces and, generate new research, conduct new research, profile our communities so that we are in tune with what is happening on the ground. Also strengthening strategic partnership for enhanced service delivery. Partnerships are essential because they are silo busting strategies where we no longer, existence in the 21st century is no longer about the individual or an organization operating on its own, but it's about collaboration, cooperation, coexistence. So we need to move away from the silo mentality, right? There are also issues to do with high costs of internet connectivity, because our internet service are provided by
Thank you.
commercial internet service providers. Commercial internet service providers, and they are into business for profit. But however, there is an alternative, for example, in Africa, which is known as the NREN, National Research and Education Networks. And Africa has numerous of these NRENs. Each country has one or two of an NREN. This is a non-commercial internet service provider that works with universities, schools. And in Africa, most of the NRENs, National Research and Education Networks, they work under the banner of Ubuntu Connect. Ubuntu Connect works with libraries to enable them also to have access to affordable internet connectivity. We have also the problem of a vibrant lack of a vibrant indigenous publishing industry, because we rely more on a multinational publishing industries, and very few of our industries. We need to, have some of our librarians moving also to become publishers, because if you have experience in dealing with the books, knowledge, and etc., you should be able to develop yourself into a good publisher. Our research infrastructure, in as far as ICTs, digital technology, and etc., libraries included, they are part of the research infrastructure, need also to be improved and funded. We also need to ensure that we as librarians, we continuously learn, because if we do not learn, we will not be able to, match up to the changing, environment in the infosphere. So continuous professional development and workplace learning should be one of those key things. Like what we are doing now is part of that continuous learning, right? To recommend, we say that's the last align our library development to national development goals and also sustainable development goals. Strengthen strategic partnership, continue network and advocacy for libraries at all levels, as alluded to by the other key note speakers who came before me. We also need to think of space, our spaces, our libraries. Some of them, we inherited them from colonialism, and they have continued on, with that outlook as elitists, anachronistic, cut off from the other demographic groups in our society. How do we bring in some, an indigenous ambience? How do we Africanize our libraries, especially the public libraries, so that we bring in song, dance, and drama, and everything that makes us African. Also, we should focus more on access rather than ownership. If we are, in operating in technology endowed environments where we can share our digital resources. Good thing also to create local content through open educational resources and promoting various forms of literacy, and also promoting intergenerational dialogue, especially for public libraries, between the various demographic groups, and also promoting interfaith dialogues to enhance social cohesion. And also, we should bring out or revitalize the pedagogical role of the librarian. The librarian is a pedagogist, a teacher, is a philosopher, is a lecturer, because we cut the umbilical cord that separates one from darkness and light through providing access to knowledge. So we are educators in a way, and we are strong in that arena. And aligning LIS education and training with the current trends, so that LIS schools interact more also with industry and with communities. And lastly, rising from the silo mentality, so that we interact, we connect, we cooperate, and we collaborate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You said a mouthful, Dr. Chisita. Thank you very, very much. These are real reflections. And thank you for the chronological narration of developments in the library space. You outlined, building blocks that shape what we term as the 21st century library. Thank you so much. And of course, the challenges that you outlined, these are they cut across, and these are actually the hindrances towards access to information. Thank you very much. A round of applause to Dr. Chisita. Thank you. And now we move to, our next item, which I think most of you have been waiting for. That is the question session. We'll do it like this. We'll have a set of 3 questions at a time, and then request our speakers to respond, and then we'll take another set of questions until we exhaust them. The first set of questions, Marita, please assist me with the names if I don't see any. maybe I should raise the first one. The first question will be to you, Dr. Chisita. Human beings are immortal, and taking a leaf from that, you spoke of on the reflections. You spoke of having information that span from time immemorial, and when people die, especially in our tradition, when people die, especially the old ones, then they live with the information. So what I wanted to tap from you is your view on the role oral history can play with regard to tapping into those unwritten, unwritten information, or an unwritten, be it books, articles, or any other publication. What is your view with regard to oral history as a way of securing, that available information?
Okay, can I respond?
That will be the first one. Let's get another two more questions, and then I have. Let me see. Others can still go to the chat and write their questions there. Itumeleng, I see your hand.
Yes, you may speak. Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor. I just want to, mine is just two comments. I just want to congratulate Dr. Chisita for a very informative and educational presentation. You made a very important comment when you spoke of spheres, that the infosphere dominates all other spheres. Last week, Friday, we were attending a session by the Chief of South African National Defence Force, where he came up with a concept of a journey to greatness. And in all those things that he indicated, I realized that information was omitted. And I stood up and said, without information is actually, to me, the cornerstone of everything. Without information, you cannot move. Information to me is the spinal cord of any society, it's a spinal cord of anything. So I was very impressed when Dr. Chisita spoke about infosphere, that it dominates all other spheres. The other thing that I want to comment on is what you spoke about, the pedagogical role of librarians. We have to teach everywhere. We have to be teachers, we have to be visible. We have to be, and I want to connect this with what Fatima Daris indicated, that be a librarian in all spheres of your life. Don't be a librarian just within four walls. Be a librarian in your family and friends. Be a librarian in your community. Be a librarian in your church. Be a librarian in your synagogue, temple, and mosque. Which means we have to, to make sure that we are teachers. We need to make sure that we inspire all other people everywhere. So thank you very much for those, Dr. Chisita.
Can I respond?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for the comments and for the opportunity there. Why I emphasize on the pedagogical role, because learning takes place in various forms, and the learning that we have in the library, it's independent, liberated learning, which is based on the principles of what we can call utagogy, which is different from pedagogy in a sense, but even though it has a pedagogical aspect, because when you borrow a book or you ask for a laptop to go and access resources from a database. You are learning on your own. The librarian is a facilitator, facilitating and making that possible. And on the values of information that has also been raised here, I think during the COVID pandemic, when the COVID pandemic started, if you noticed one thing, the World Health Organization Secretary, initially when it was announced in December, they just said there is a pandemic. Okay, the world was now in a state of shock. Then after a few days or so on, he came back to say, we are now facing two pandemics. That's the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, and the infodemic. So we are facing a pandemic within a pandemic. So they realized that they had omitted the role of information in dealing with the pandemic. So they now called that for a war on all fronts to fight the COVID physically and to fight it also on the information side. Because what had happened now, because of the fact that people had access to internet, fake news peddlers began peddling a lot of information, some of which was not credible. So also, when we look at how governments throughout Africa responded, libraries were closed. They did not consider the fact that some libraries do not have resources. They are not technologically endowed to offer digital resources. Librarians were not part of the emergency team to plan for the pandemic because their skills would also have been very useful because librarians are experts in dealing with disasters, in managing disasters. So their input could also have been very useful in planning how to deal with the pandemic because they were going to come in more on fighting the infodemic side of things because the infodemic was also causing havoc and you needed to fight the war on both sides. Then on oral tradition, lastly, yes, oral traditions are very important, especially the IFLA, Indigenous Matters section, places high value on oral traditions because of the fact that knowledge is passed from through the word of the mouth, and we have always relied on the word of the mouth throughout time and space. So I know in certain LIS schools, it's part of the curriculum. They have to know about oral traditions and even be given a project where they go and gather data about, an oral, a project to do with oral traditions. So, because through oral traditions, we learn more, especially like, for example, the classical art of African conversation, that is riddles, puns, proverbs, songs of sadness, songs of happiness, what we call dashes, measures. We learn language itself through oral tradition. So we need the oral traditionalists, always to be part and parcel of the library. They should be invited to the library, either to do storytelling, to do some poems, to do some music. It's not only about books, but we need a library that is decolonized, a decolonized library that also takes into account the indigenous people. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chisita. The next set of questions Mo?
Thank you, Dr. Lidwaba, and thank you to Dr. Chisita, Ntate Mabasa, and Ntate Molepo. And happy Librarians Day, South African Librarians Day to all my colleagues. Mine is actually on the issue of curriculum development. And actually, it was sparked by the recommendations presented by Dr. Chisita on the issue of strategic partnerships, the alignment of LIS education with the trends, and also trying to rise above the silo mentality. And I'm not sure I think the three of them will then respond. In an effort to try and have a well-rounded librarian, does the issue of curriculum development then lies with an institution? Does a particular institution have an autonomy on what the curriculum should be, or does associations such as LIASA have a say in terms of how perhaps the curriculum should be developed by different institutions, looking at the current trends, of course? Thank you, Dr. Ledwaba.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mo. There's another one, Dr. Chisita.
All right.
From Zuzipe. Zuzipe, your hand is up. Can you?
Thank you, Dr. Ledwaba.
Yes, okay.
And happy Librarians Day to my fellow colleagues. Mine is not really a question. It's rather a concern or a complaint, I would say. But firstly, I would love to appreciate Dr. Chisita. That was such an informative presentation. Thank you so much. Touching on the challenges. On the challenges that are faced, challenges being encountered by African libraries. Just the first point, that was the digital divide, the difference between the illiterate and those who are literate. Going back to, like I said, it's not really a question, it's more of a complaint or a concern, actually. I believe that most of the professionals here are part of the hiring process. They are part of the decision makers in the hiring process in libraries, for library assistants, librarians, and so forth. Now with the challenge, I'm just going to take the first one, the digital divide challenge. I believe that only professional librarians can be able to fight such challenges. But looking at how things are being done, libraries hiring people with grade 10s, grade 11s, grade 12s, these people don't really have the knowledge, the academic knowledge that we are being taught from our universities. Now it's going to be so hard to fight those challenges if the decision makers in the hiring process keep hiring people without the actual professional qualification, that is the librarian's qualification. And many other challenges that are being encountered. It's going to be really hard to fight them because of that, of what the decision makers do. We cannot really hire people with grade 10s, grade 11s, grade 12s, when there are hundreds and hundreds of librarian professionals who are sitting at home without jobs. These challenges can only be fought by professional librarians. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zozipo. The third one will be from Patience.
Good day, everyone, and happy Librarians Day. I also just want to comment and add on to what the previous speaker has said. it's very disheartening, librarians, when some students are out there going to a 4-year, 3-year degree, and then you have jobs that are being advertised for library assistants, and you see the requirement is a grade 12. I have a lot of students, because I'm a mentor, that ask me, what am I going to do? Why is the requirement a grade 12 and not maybe a diploma? What about the students that actually go do a library science diploma? So really, being in the field myself, being an employer myself, it's really painful to see our my colleagues, freshmen, being out there and not even regretting, rather, being in the library science. And then there was a recommendation at the end.
Colleagues, please mute your mics if you're not on speaking.
Okay. Yes, and then there was a recommendation by Professor Sita at the end, aligning LIS education and training with current trends. So it also goes back to the current curriculum. And if I look at what UNISA is offering, and then I look at what UP is offering, and I look at UCT, UKZN in terms of library science, I can note down a couple of loopholes if you compare to other LIS schools around the world. Currently, maybe my expectation from the presentation rather was a focus on maybe somebody speaking about our threat, ChatGPT, AI. I'm a school librarian. I've been a school librarian for the past 15 years. Me being a school librarian and with AI now, I just feel, okay, what can I do? Because someone will just go on in AI and download the answers, or AI can write them the whole essay for them. So I guess this is more aligning LIS education and training with current trends. It would be something that I would wish to see with the curriculum, with our LIS curriculum across all the LIS schools in South Africa, and also in any presentation, because maybe I feel it more as I'm in a school library, and university libraries have AI checkers and all that. But when you are in a school, it's a totally different thing altogether. So it's just on AI aligning with our current trends, and then also curriculum development. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. You can respond to the questions, and Maurice, you can also assist with the response as well.
Okay, so let me just do brief response there. There was a question on LIS curriculum. That is it only a concern of the LIS schools, or it's a concern for stakeholders? Firstly, maybe let's define curriculum as the learning, teaching, learning, and research activities that, if it is planned systematic teaching, learning activities that take place within the aegis of the school environment or the institutional environment, whether in class physically or outside or digitally or virtually, it's all part of the curriculum. Some also view curriculum as selections from culture, because where education is concerned, there's also issues to do with the power. Governments have their expectations that this is what should be learned in as far as their vision and their strategic plans are concerned. But basically, the training of LIS schools, sorry, students, it's not just a preserve of the LIS school, but it's also an issue that is of interest to various stakeholders, including the government, including the professional association. Why the professional association? Because the professional association stands for the interests of those members of that profession. It is the one that gives shape to the profession of, let's say, information science. And you find in other countries that the professional association has a lot more to do in terms of what is being taught. They are part of maybe an advisory board of that institution. They are in frequent communication with the LIS school so that they know what is going on and what is being taught. Experts in industry are, contacted more often and sometimes invited to just discuss issues, their expectations when students go there for work integrated learning, or what they call on-the-job training and education in other countries, so that it's not just the LIS school. The students themselves also can also be asked what it is that they want to learn. They can also make an input into how the curriculum is structured. So it's not a one-sided issue. And the issue of hiring, question on issue of hiring unqualified librarian, yeah, that one is a disaster because it defeats the whole purpose of why LIS, students, or we train LIS professionals. So that is a disaster. I know in certain situations where I was reading that you would find that in a, let's say, an organization, someone will just take his or her cousin and say, okay, you passed matric, go and work in the library. That's a professional injustice, or at the highest level. That should never be tolerated, because a profession is a profession, just like medicine. Because LIS is a profession. Why it's a profession? Because it has got its own board of knowledge, its own corpus of knowledge. It has got its own ethics. It has its own membership levels. It has its own community sanction. So many things that defines the LIS as a profession. It has all the attributes that any other professions do have. It has got its own local and international organizations that stand for it. So it should not be sold to the lowest bidder in the streets just because you wanted to maybe please someone. Then there was a question on aligning LIS with the current trends. Yes, I had you, my sister, there on aligning that your concerns on issues to do with things like chat, GPT, these smart technologies, artificial intelligences, etc. But I believe that while those things are important, yes, but the brave new world, this weird, wired, networked world, or weird, wired world that we are into, is not only about technology, but it's also about how do we integrate human beings, technology, and culture. Libraries, I talked of meta literacy there. Meta literacy is not about just teaching someone about books or information. It's also about, it's a meta literacy encompasses all other literacies. Because what brought about meta literacy was that while information literacy dealt with information, digital literacy dealt with the digital panoply of digital technologies, cultural literacy dealt with culture. Then they thought, no, let's bring a holistic model that incorporates all other literacies. So in meta literacy, you've got technology literacy, information, all other literacies are incorporated there. So it's not just about how to access information, like let's say findability, locatability, retrievability, searchability, discoverability, shareability of information, but it's also about teaching someone to not to be mentally lazy and allow technology to find the answers for you, because that tantamounts to mental ineptitude, because in the end we have people who are not intelligent because they are using technology to find answers for them. You see, because these technologies are products of human beings, but they cannot be smarter than the human being himself. If you have read a book by Percy Shelley known as Frankenstein, there's a man who invents a monster, and the monster becomes so weird when the monster is grown and makes demands to the creator that, okay, you created me alone, I now need a wife or a partner. If you don't do that, I'm going to kill your children. And there is a battle between this created monster and the creator. So the lesson from that book is that human beings should not play God, you see. So while we have these technologies, we should be able to use them in a, what we can call a sagacious or in a wiser way, so that they don't destroy the intellectual, quality of our students in as far as knowledge generation is concerned. Because if they are mentally lazy, who is going to generate more knowledge for the next generation? Thank you.
Can I make some comments?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make 2 comments. My experience is that we are highly undermined and undervalued as librarians. I remember when I completed my degree, at that time it was a 4-year degree, but my salary was equivalent to someone who was just a senior clerk without even matric at that time. Most of the people only had JC or standard 8. So we're undervalued. So I think it's something that LIASA has to look at seriously. And it's also very, very much crucial that we, as the Library Information Association of South Africa, we should play an important role in making sure that we contribute with regard to curriculum development in LI schools. I think if Brachali was still here, you will remember very well that at least LIASA in 1995, that was a burning issue. That we should not be an association that is just a toothless dog. We should actually have value. And there was a question in saying there was so many issues to say what role is the association going to play. Some were saying that we should have that kind of a mandate to play a role like unions, and says, so there were so many debates. I think there's something that we need to look at as an association, have a special forum to discuss about these things. It's very crucial, so that it cannot be undermined. It's very, very important. The issue of hiring librarians and with low qualifications is there are 2 reasons. One is actually lack of knowledge. Then it comes down to what Dr. Chisita has indicated, that we as librarians has got a pedagogical role. Lack of knowledge. A very good example was there was a post in one of my libraries at Special Forces School 2 years ago, and it was advertised with standard 10 as a requirement, and I immediately stopped the process. And the post owners who were the Special Forces School indicated to me that they did not even know what a librarian is. But in their structure, there's a post of a librarian in that school, and so they thought maybe something a librarian is, just matric is good enough. So it also indicates that we've got a very, very important role to play, to teach and to educate and to be visible and to be there and to make sure that we contribute significantly in this sphere. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me get the last round. I see two hands there. This will be the last two questions from them. The first one, Your Highness.
Majesty and all the colleagues. Thank you, Dr. Trisika, for the well-informing presentation. Happy Librarians Day, colleagues, and a call to us to be proud of who we are and those that is being librarians is well noted. Mine was just to perhaps give a comment or maybe a recommendation which has been burning my heart since I started as a librarian years ago. That there should be a way that will make sure that practicing librarians and teaching librarians are in sync. And I think Dr. Chisita has mentioned that. That will enable us to ensure that by the time we produce a librarian from the School of Librarianship or Information Science is a well-rounded librarian. And those will be librarians that will, of course, be able to respond to the generations that would like to produce as librarians. Librarians that have been vested with being lifelong learners, library literate, and also information literate citizens and societies. And I think there is a disjuncture between us that are sitting in offices practicing and those that are in the classes, whether it's virtual classes or face-to-face classes. And in this paradigm, and where we are sitting discussing this core importance of our role as librarians, I think that is one of the things that we need to look into going forward. And I think I'll pause at that. Thank you, Your Majesty, and thank you to all the presenters today.
Thank you, Your Highness. The last question will be from Agnes. Madia? Yes.
Thank you, sir. Though I am covered, I just wanted to highlight the issue of librarians being undermined. One, I'm working for one of the provincial government wherein libraries, it's run by, you know, the bigger positions are run by teachers. I'm a librarian by profession, but I'm working at records, which is related one thing. So libraries has been created to schools, but no one is running those libraries. That means those libraries are run by the teachers. And when comes the positions, they say SES, Senior Education Specialist in libraries. So to me, I don't see a sense of being a librarian, but the position it's run by teachers. I felt, you know, libraries has been undermined in terms of that. So I'm puzzling. Thank you.
Thank you. A response and closing?
Maybe Mr. Mabasa, you can start, then I come after you. Or you're muted.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying I'm so impressed and by the comment by Sis Agnes, and it's very, very, very much real. We had an issue when I was still working for the Provincial Library Services in the Limpopo, where our director was a social worker. Do you understand? I mean, how do you do that? How do you do such kind of a thing? I mean, as you indicated, senior positions are given to people who don't even have the qualifications. That's a very gross negligence of gross undermining of our profession. And I think as the Library Information Association of South Africa, these are some of the burning issues that we need to attend to. In 2001, we even went to an extent of having a serious march in Phalaborwa, you know, trying to make people aware that we are professionals, we've got a role to play, we're critical in the society. So this is something that really is something that we really seriously need to look at. But she's very much right. And this trend of appointing people who are not qualified to lead libraries is continuing, and it needs to stop. And it needs to stop right now. Thank you.
Can I come in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree there with the speaker as well as Mr. Mabasa, because I also noticed that in certain situations, especially in Anglophone countries, in schools, you find that a librarian gets a job there, and you are asked to report to the head of department for English. So I found that to be a misnomer because, you know, as a librarian, you are a professional who should be independent enough. And also another thing is that the tradition in Africa is that when you go to universities, librarians are regarded as some administrative staff. But when you compare this to other countries now, for example, outside countries, you find that librarians are also academics. You have a professor who is a librarian. You have a dean who is a librarian. So there's need for a fundamental rethink through LIASA on that, so that we begin to discuss issues of even tenureship and how to elevate the status of librarians, so that they are not just taken as some, you know, a peripheral group of people who are just there to do administrative stuff. You see, I have seen also in terms of recruiting students, in certain institutions, you find that at one time I was, you know, a head of department. You find some students are just sent to you. Then you say, why are you coming to the department? Say, you know, they say for the other areas, you know, I might find the challenges, but here maybe LIS is easy. Then I am surprised is that no, LIS, it's not an easy, it's a very difficult subject because it's broad, it's interdisciplinary, it has its core areas, but it's interdisciplinary and it has a lot of, you know, impact in terms of maneuvering once one graduates, you see. So I think there's a lot of need for lot of advocacy in that area to ensure that our profession remains vibrant and to ensure that people know that you cannot substitute a qualified librarian for, you know, for someone who has no qualifications at all, because that undermines the whole essence of training, the whole essence of professionalism, because you cannot take LIS, an internationally, you know, acclaimed profession, and just let anyone have their field day there. There is another issue that is, maybe I'll just highlight this one, where people have always thought that since technology, they thought librarianship is now going to die. And they expected that maybe by 2000, because this is where most digital projects and initiatives started. They thought that no, with the coming of e-books, this is the end of the library. But surprisingly, the library is still going on, and it will continue on to go on and on and on and on. Now, it is these people without qualifications who, when they are brought into the system, will then discredit the profession. Just like when you look at journalism, nowadays people say, since there is internet, everyone is a journalist, you can write anything. And this has led to fake news. And what we now say is that has journalism gone to the dogs, or the dogs have gone to journalism? So it's the other way, where the people who are not journalists are masquerading as journalists. Then they write articles which are fake and discredit the journalists who are trained. So it's the same problem that we encounter also in LIS, where those who are brought in without those qualifications end up discrediting those who have got qualifications, because they don't have the knowledge on how things should be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chisita, Mr. Mabasa. The discussion should continue even beyond here. And I guess our leadership there, LIASA leadership, will take forward the discussions. And of course, there are probably, some things in the pipeline that they are looking at. I think we went beyond time. There are still many questions to be asked, but yeah, because of time, I think I will continue the discussions outside this forum.